Howdy everyone. Alrighty, so I have decided to take a break from engine wiring and things of that nature. Anything firewall forward at this point, I'm putting the brakes on just because, like I had explained in my last video, everything is starting to kind of revolve around the exhaust system. So I've got my exhaust system on order. I was told there's about a 6-week or more lead time on the exhaust. So that kind of sucks. I really don't want to have to wait that long, but of course it's not like I don't have anything else to do, right? So that's going to be put on hold until I get the exhaust. Once I get the exhaust in, then I can do all this other wiring and things of that nature. So I've decided to come back to some of this interior work. So one of the first things that I've done, that I've been working on, when I originally had the interior in place and my wife and I sat in here, I was trying to figure out where exactly the seats felt the best, at least initially. And the seat backs, of course, come with those flaps in the back for the adjustment. And I think the hinge location that we used was correct. But with the flap in the back, the seat was a little too far forward, and with the flap out of the way, the seat was reclined a little too far back. So I needed something in between. So I just went ahead and made new flaps for the back. So here are the new pieces that I just made. Exact duplicates of the other one, except obviously it's got smaller holes because it's a smaller piece, and I put more of them since they're so small. I just put a whole row of them. But this flap, width-wise, is about half the size of the original. So I made 2 of them, of course. The other one is on the seat there. So that's what I've been working on. We'll see how these go. At some point, I'll bring the seats back up, and I'll see how this feels with the new adjustment. So now that that is done, I'm going to go ahead and start working on permanently attaching the stick boots. So you can see I've got the floor pans out. I've got one floor pan here on the bench, and you can see a stick boot here. So these stick boots originally there is a frame. I don't know if it's plastic or aluminum. I'm going to assume it's aluminum. I'll find out shortly. But they do have a frame, and they have Velcro. Well, I am not using Velcro. My seat pans were built with nut plates installed, so I've got 4 nut plates. So my plan is to install the stick boot and use those nut plates. I'm just going to go right through the boot in those 4 locations and screw them in place. So I don't need Velcro. So I started with this other boot, removing the Velcro, and I found out that the Velcro is not just glued on. Let's see if I can get this in some light here. You can see where the Velcro is also stitched. So it's double-sided sticky taped and stitched. So I went ahead and cut the stitching and cleaned up the glue, and now there is no Velcro. The stitching is only for the Velcro. The stitching does not hold the leather to the frame. It looks to me like it is just, it's glued to the frame. It's probably some kind of contact cement or something like that. So don't be afraid that cutting the stitching is going to undo the leather from the frame. So now that this one is all cleaned up, I got to do the other one. And I'm going to go ahead and fit this to the frame. Like I said, all I need to do is figure out how to transfer the holes that are already on the pan, the floor pan. I got to figure out how to transfer those 4 holes to this, and then just a couple of through holes, and I'm done. So I've got this one kind of ready to go. I'm going to clean up the other one and figure out how I'm going to get these things matched. Talk to you later. Howdy everyone. All right, so what I'm going to try to do is fit these stick boots to my floor pans with screws, which I already have nut plates for on the pan. So when I built the pan, of course, these nut plates were installed at that point. Now that I have my boots, I'm going to try to incorporate the two together. So here's what I'm doing. I went ahead and I basically took the center of each hole and extended center lines out from the center of each hole. So these lines come out a couple of inches from the hole in each direction. So that just gives me reference points for the holes themselves. You can maybe see the extension line here, and one here, here, and here. And then I've also measured this opening and located a center line for the opening extended here. Then what I had done, I'd taken the boot itself, and this might be a little difficult to see, but I measured the boot and also marked a center line there and one on the other side right there. And then when you look at the profile of the boots, you can see how it's already pre-angled, and that angle vaguely fits the angle of the floorboard, and you have to pay a little bit of attention to that because you don't want to get it backwards. Would it be the end of the world? Probably not. But just kind of pay attention that you've got this oriented in the right direction. So with that in mind, all I had done at this point was take the boot, lay it on the plate, line up my center line here with the center line that I marked on the boot itself, roughly. Same thing with the other side. Let's see, I've got this backwards already. Let me flip this around. Again, just line up the center lines between the boot and the pan on both sides, right? Center line on the boot, center line on the pan. And then you can kind of start looking at edge distance, right? So now you know where the edge of the boot is, and you can see where that hole needs to be in relation to the edge here. And then, of course, you can see your reference mark here for the center of the hole. So at this point, I wasn't happy with the edge distance. If I had the crease in the boot lined up with the crease in the pan, I basically had very little edge distance here. So unfortunately, I have to shift the boot back, which is going to offset these two bends, but I don't care because this gives a lot. The boot itself flexes a lot, and I don't really care. I'm mostly concerned about edge distance. So I just went ahead and made sure I kept my center lines lined up, and looking at my extension marks for the holes, I can kind of figure out how much edge distance here, and then the same here using these extension lines, comparing it to the edge of the boot, trying to figure out by shifting the boot around to get that edge distance on both sides. Once I was happy with the location of the boot, then it was just a matter of transferring this line up onto the boot, this line up onto the boot, this line up, and this line up, and then marking them. Of course, you do that on the other side over here as well. And you can see those, hopefully. So there's a little alignment mark and an alignment mark. And then where they cross is where I'm going to drill my holes. And you can see the edge distance now between here and where the hole's actually going to be. And then on the other side, it's more of the same. There's a little reference mark there, another little reference mark there, and then where they cross is where I'm going to drill the hole. There's the other one. So you can see edge distance from here to the hole, and the edge distance from here to the hole. And they're close. This edge distance is roughly the same as this edge distance. So you can kind of see how the holes are offset. There's from this side point over to this hole this dimension is bigger than it is from this one to this one, or from this hole to this edge. And they're all kind of like that. This one is the most exaggerated. The hole's going to be way over here. You can see this distance here compared to this distance right here. That's just the way that the holes are on the pan. And these are stock locations from vans. I did not put these in myself. These are already pre-drilled into the pan. I just added the nut plates. In hindsight, maybe I would have shifted these around, but at the time I really wasn't sure what this was all about. So anywho, so I believe this one is ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and drill these holes, and we'll see what happens. Howdy everyone. So there is obviously the stick boot in place. Of course, the seat pan itself is not bolted down. I still have some more work to do up underneath there, which I'll get to later. But that's the stick boot in place. You can see that I've got the screws in place, and the edge distance is just fine. But like I've talked about before, to get that good edge distance, you can see how the pre-bent corner here from the boot doesn't exactly line up with the pre-bent corner of the floor pan. If I were to move this around so that it would lay correctly with this seam, the edge distance on these two bolts would basically be 0. They're just on the very edge. So I elected to maintain a quality edge distance just so that this would stay nicely attached without cracking. And I'm not too worried about the alignment between this and the pan. The other thing is that these boots are leather, and of course they have the zipper and they have these seams with the stitching. So underneath there's a lot of material that's wrapped around the frame, and you've got the seams here which creates a bulge, and then you've got a big hump right here in the middle, right here where my thumb is, where the zipper comes through and then it gets wrapped around. So that's a pretty good bulge. The point is this does not lay very flat when it's on the seat pan, because you've got a lot of these corners, are pretty thick compared to the rest of the frame with all the material that's overlapped and folded. So it's not the best fit. Personally, at this point, I don't really care just because of what it is and where it is. I'm not too worried about the fit and the finish. It's kind of hard to tell from this angle, but it doesn't sit. There's a gap, underneath, especially here where these two creases don't line up. I can almost get my finger in there. But from this perspective, it looks fine. Once you have the seat in, of course, you won't be able to see hardly anything. So that's it for the stick boots, I believe. I've got the passenger one to do next. That's what I'm going to work on the first part of today. And then you see that open hole down here. That's for the aileron push-pull tube. I've also got the boots for that, and I'll have to revisit that just like I did with the stick boots. I believe those might also be some kind of a Velcro. I'm not sure. They might have a frame that gets either riveted or bolted to the hole, and then the boot itself gets tie wrapped. I don't recall, but anywho, once I get this boot finished, I might move on to doing these. So we'll see. All right, so for now, steady as she goes, and I'll talk to you guys later.